is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be talking about the fortification system from Battlefield 5 and whether or not I think it has a place in Battlefield 2042. Now, I'm not so much going to be talking about any news on this topic or whether or not I think it is going to happen, as so far we've really just not heard anything on it, and so this is mostly just going to be discussing my thoughts on the system itself and then discussing whether I personally think it would work in 2042 or not. For those who are unsure what I mean when I say the fortification system, this was a system implemented in Battlefield 5 where you were essentially able to build up certain areas of the map with sandbags or create ammo or health crates around the map, for example, just allowing players to essentially take some level of control of the map and build it up for defense if they wanted to, as well as just blow it to shit if they wanted to as well. I remember when this was first announced at I think EA Play, or one of the early reveal events that they had before launch anyway, so many people were really unhappy with these changes, as it was something that they'd never really seen before and it did seem very unique and very outlandish in a way, and so people were really quick to write it off and say that they weren't a fan of it. With that being said, I think once the game actually released, the majority of the player base probably changed their mind over time, as it does provide a pretty unique way to hold down areas of the map that you need to defend, and it doesn't really hurt the gameplay at all, at least not as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't allow you to just create heaps of camping spots or anything like that, so in the grand scheme of things, there's really not that much that it does negatively to the game. I find that especially in game modes like Breakthrough or Rush, for example, where there's a clear attacking and defending team, these fortifications really allow you to dig in and set up much better for defense than you ever really could before, and it seems to allow for some more sort of strategic gameplay, as the attacking team often has to play slightly different depending on whether or not the enemy team is set up with these fortifications. When you are on defense, it gives you so much more of that defensive feeling, knowing that if you set up some sandbags in this area or that area, it's going to funnel the enemies through an area that you can keep a close eye on. If you build some of those huge cinder blocks, then it can force enemies to take their vehicles in different directions if they want to get into your location, and it just feels like that adds a layer of strategy to the game that was never really there before in these game modes. One other thing that I think it does really well is allowing those newer or less experienced players to really feel like they are adding value to their team. If you're new to shooters and you're just not all that good yet, but you really want to help the team win however possible, well, rather than focusing on getting all the kills and winning that way, you can help your team by setting up sandbags or blockades, or even just building health and ammo crates for your team, and it just provides another way for those players to play the game if they aren't quite as good as the average player, or hell, even if they're good but they're just having a kind of shitty game, they can focus on those areas instead. So in terms of whether I think the system is good, I definitely am a big fan of it overall. I don't at all think it's like pivotal to the game's success or fun factor or anything like that, but personally it was one of the few things the Battlefield 5 implemented that I actually really liked, and I thought it did add a lot of value to the game, especially in the more attack and defend game modes like I said. Now, as for whether or not I think it has a place in Battlefield 2042, I actually really think it does, and arguably more than Battlefield 5 did, honestly. From what we've seen so far, Battlefield 2042 has a lot of those like bigger city type maps, or even just those more built up areas like the shipping container yard on Manifest, for example. It seems like there are lots of places where regular destruction won't really be taking place, such as the buildings being blown up and stuff like that, because in those areas that I mentioned, like the cities for example, they're obviously just not going to be able to blow up the entire city, so in those sections of the map it might actually feel like there's not really that much destruction at all. If the fortification system were to be implemented in 2042, however, I think that would add to the destructive feeling in those areas. If you can set up little sandbag bunkers and stuff like that, then they can obviously be blown up by tanks or grenades, and I think that will at least feel like there is some level of destruction within those city areas. Outside of the actual gameplay elements, I think it would also just add to the overall atmosphere of the game, honestly. A lot of these maps look to be not quite as war-torn as what we've seen in the last two games. Obviously Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5 were both set in world wars, so the fact those places were war-torn makes sense, but if this war taking place in 2042 is meant to be essentially World War III, then honestly I would love to see a little bit more of that like wartime vibe than just these nice pristine cities or locations that don't necessarily feel like they're part of a war. Looking at Kaleidoscope for example, other than a couple of fires here and there, the city still looks to be in pretty good nick. It doesn't really feel like it's part of a war from what we've seen, but if you can build up sandbag bunkers and all that kind of stuff, as well as the new defilade system taking place and obviously creating little divots everywhere and stuff like that, I think that would make it feel so much more immersive in the long run, and it wouldn't come at the cost of anything negative to the game, at least not as far as I can see, as like I said, it was done in Battlefield 5 and it didn't really at all seem to negatively impact the game. Now personally I'm not too sure if we will actually see it in the game, just because we've not really seen any hint of it just yet, and so if I had to guess right now, I would assume that it will be removed from the game, just because there are always a lot of features that DICE implement that don't end up staying around. Stuff like the Behemoth system being the perfect example, but in saying that, I actually do hope it is in Battlefield 2042, as I think it would have a great role in the game, especially in those modes like Breakthrough or Rush, where there are attackers and defenders. With 128 player lobbies, there's going to be so many people coming from so many angles, and I think it would be great to be able to set up some defensive areas just for that reason. Let me know what you guys think of the fortification system down in the comments, and whether or not you think it should be in the game. Like I said, I'm not too sure whether it will be there, but I'm definitely keen to hear what you guys think of it. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like down below, and if you are new, then consider subscribing to the channel with those notifications on. Thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.